the hell gets in the way of people, number one, discovering their purpose, first
Yeah.
off? And even if they find it, how do you get off? I can tell you that I've got off track somewhat in my purpose, more built around how I got off track on some values, my values, which is connected. But let's just talk about what takes people off track or gets in their way of getting to it, based on your experience. Because, and I know there isn't any one thing or any,
Oh,
it's just a thing, but
yeah.
give me, based on your experience, what is some of the things that people bump up against?
Yeah. So it's anything that reactivates our ego.
Mm, mm-hmm,
Anything, or as Jung would say, anything that's in our shadow.
mm-hmm,
Uh, Anything that we see as a threat. You know, uh, I'm thinking of the story of Jesus on the cross right now.
mm-hmm,
So there he is crucified, and what comes out of his mouth at the end of his life is, "Forgive them, Lord, they know not what they do."
mm-hmm,
No, his purpose was one of love.
mm-hmm.
So a practice was forgiveness. Yeah. So when your life's, what gets in the way is your ego, your sense of importance, your sense of life is about you, not about the contribution you're going to make. And
Mm-hmm.
that's hardwired. We are hardwired to have our lives be about us.
Mm-hmm.
When almost everybody wakes up in the morning, the first thing on their mind is, what do I have to do today? Not what does anybody else have to do today? How does my body feel? So we're oriented around this thing right here, and this thing right here wants to survive.
Mm-hmm.
So putting on top of this thing right here a sense of purpose can seem to go counter. I happen to think that if everyone on the planet realized that their desire to survive rather than live a life of purpose is what's getting in the way of the planet working, we'd have a different planet that we're on,
Mm-hmm.
completely different. It wouldn't be, John Lennon, I, me, or George Harrison, I, me, my. It would be a we rather than an I, living a we life rather than an I life.
So when you look at, and I want to just talk a little bit about ego, you're uh, got far more experience in terms of kind of describing it, defining it. But you
Yeah.
look at ego, and many think of ego, they think of, I don't know, they think of arrogance, and they think of somebody who's, maybe, full of themselves. But that's
Self
really
self-importance. Self,
self-importance. But
yeah.
that's only one description. I mean, I look at ego, and what we understand about ego is that it also protects oneself. So in other words, we talk about tall poppy, and somebody'd say, well, that's ego. But somebody else would look at it and go, I don't want, my ego doesn't want to be seen.
Yeah.
It wants to hide because it wants to protect itself from being discovered, from
Yeah.
being seen as a fake or a fraud or whatever. So ego plays on both sides of
Totally.
that equation, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because you used the word earlier, and I don't know why ego came out, but I think ego came out of my mouth because it's more commonly understood than the phrase you used earlier called operating system.
Mm-hmm.
So we each have, by the age of 10 or 12 or younger, an operating system, a patterned way of interacting with the world,
Mm-hmm.
of being boastful, of being secretive, we have a patterned way of dealing with threats.
Mm-hmm.
And that's any patterned behavior, that stimulus response is going to get in the way of us living a life of purpose, period.
Yeah.
Because a life of purpose is a creative life. It's not automatic. It never comes automatically to live a life of purpose.
Okay, let me throw in a question here because I know listeners are going to be asking it.
Good.
Okay, what has this got to do with me making a living and making money? Like, how do it all come together? Like, what am I just doing? Walking around Zen like, in
Yeah.
this ethosphere of, feeling good? What is it the hell you talking about, Alan?
There is. I was just reading a book called The Mystic Manager, which is all about how do you run businesses and stay true to your purpose.
Well, okay, so good question. Why don't we answer that?
Yeah, I love it. And as you know, I am very successful,
Mhm.
and you can be very successful living a life of contribution. Tony Hsieh, may he rest in peace, started Zappos. The first 3 years, there was only one purpose for Zappos existing, and it wasn't to sell shoes. It was extraordinary customer service. He lost money doing it, but he stayed true to, he said, if I build a company based on extraordinary customer service, profits are going to come out of our ears. And they did.
Mhm.
They did. So businesses that are, or, you know, I, if you go to work, if you're on a salary and you're going to work to fulfill your purpose, and your purpose is a big one, rather than you going to work to fulfill your paycheck, you'll probably be the one that gets promoted and gets a raise because your work will stand out.
Because you will stand up.
You'll be on a mission.
Because you show up differently.
You know the folks who work in your shop. You were just talking about them. They're
Mhm.
on a mission.
Mhm.
Now, do they pay attention to the bottom line? Of course.
Mhm.
But the bottom line is the scoreboard. The bottom line is not the goal. It's the
Mhm.
scoreboard for, do you have a good business plan? Are you providing a good service? Are you
Mhm.
taking care of your employees? The bottom line is the scoreboard. But if your company's built around the bottom line, it has less of a chance of being a success.
I want to. I'll share a little story about that. So we did talk about it just prior to getting on our call today, and I was talking about my stores in Edmonton, and
Yeah,
my team is just crushing it. They're really doing a great job. But I went through a lot of pain through COVID. I had to shut down one of my stores, lay off staff. It was just a real tough time for everybody.
yeah,
But what I came back with was a really core group of guys, a core team of people, if you will, that just we sat down and one of the things I said is that here's an opportunity for you all to step up and to really create what's next for this business and for yourselves. I'm a I'm I don't even have a key to my store anymore. Like I literally go into the store once a quarter. I have calls once a week with the team that take about an hour. We touch base, we look at financial statements. It's all to say this: when I sat down with them almost 4 years ago now, 3.5 years ago, what I said to them, let's get really clear on a couple of things. What is the environment that you want to work in? What is the culture that you want to stand for so that when people show up, if they're going to be a fit into this culture? What is the environment? And what do we stand for as a team? So, what is that front facing experience we want people to have when they walk in the door? When I had that conversation with them, Alan,
yeah,
it was literally, we're going to set and say, what is the environment? Well, I want the environment. We want it organized. We want it clean. We want it bright. We want it, airy. We want people to come in and feel like this is a great space to hang out in. And
yes,
culturally, we want service focused. We want people that got our backs when we're working as a team. We know that there's no gossip. There's no crap in the space. And it's just a culture of support, having fun, getting stuff done, looking after our clients. And I can tell you that it has at times been difficult because we've actually had to say no to certain staff or certain potential staff that we know they got a great track record,
yeah,
but when you interview them 2, 3, 4 times, you're going, you won't last 5 minutes in this environment, in this culture, because you just don't fit.
that's right. So great, Patrick. I love that you said that. I went to do a training with an executive team a few weeks ago, and they had done the work that your team did. They did the work of their values. They had
Hmm.
five or six core values, and I created my colleague and I created a little Excel spreadsheet. We put each value up on a screen, and then they had to type in on their phone on the form 1 to 5, to what degree do they stay true to that value, and then 1 to 5, to what degree do they think the team is staying true to the value. And then
Mhm.
we projected it on the screen, and there was a big gap between what people thought the team was staying true and what they thought personally. And that's where we went to work, not on their business model, not on their plan, but to where is the gap between what their espoused values are and how they're actually operating. And then they picked one to focus on above all, and that was integrity, because that's where the biggest gap was. They weren't reliable for doing what they said they were going to do.
Okay, well, now you opened up another door.
There's
Okay,
so many doors here.
there's so many holes and rabbit holes we can go down, but they're important. These are important conversations.